I'm going to bring it to you.
Gorgeous.
Hello, everybody. Welcome. Good morning, sunshine. It's time for the Saturday, May 21st, sunrise edition of the Omaha World Herald. Jean's here with me, and I'm so lucky. And from the headlines, Werner Park tosses out peanuts for a night. Prosecutors plots to steal drugs, left teen dead. Ooh. Zika virus is on the doorstep of Africa. And we will start with, well, some international news, everyone, if I can find it. You know me, the paper actually, I know you don't know, but has been redone. And so it's difficult to find things now. So from Cairo, search crews found floating human remains, luggage, and seats from the doomed Egypt Air jetliner Friday. But they face a more complex task, finding bigger pieces of wreckage and the black boxes vital to determining why the plane plunged into the Mediterranean. Looking for clues as to whether terrorists brought down Egypt Air Flight 804 and the 66 people aboard, investigators pored over a passenger list and questioned ground crew members at the Charles de Gaulle Airport in Paris, where the plane took off. The Airbus A320 had been cruising normally in clear skies on a night flight to Cairo early Thursday when it suddenly lurched left, then right, spun all the way around. It's interesting how they know this.
Yeah.
And plummeted 38,000 feet into the sea, never issuing a distress signal.
Yeah.
In Egypt, home to 30 of the victims, grieving families and friends wondered whether their loved ones would ever be recovered. Many gathered in mosques for Salat al-Ghaib, or prayers for the absent, held for the dead whose bodies have not been found. Egyptian authorities said they believe terrorism is more likely an explanation than equipment failure. Some aviation experts have said erratic flight suggests a bomb blast or a struggle in the complex cockpit.
Yeah, that's what.
But no hard evidence has emerged. No extremist group has claimed to have brought down the aircraft. In contrast, last October's downing of a Russian jet over Egypt's Sinai Peninsula, excuse me, everyone, which killed 224 people, was claimed by the Islamic State's affiliate in the area within hours. 3 European security officials said the passenger manifest for Flight 804 contained no names on terrorism watch lists. The officials spoke on condition of anonymity. Further checks were being conducted on relatives of the passengers. French aviation investigators have begun to check and question baggage handlers, maintenance workers, gate crews, and other members at the Charles de Gaulle Airport. Experts said answers would arrive only when an examination of the wreckage and the plane's cockpit voice and flight data recorders, commonly known as black boxes. A French Navy patrol boat left the port of Toulon on Friday with sonar that can pick up the underwater pings emitted by the boxes. Who knew they had that?
Yeah.
It will take the vessel 2 or 3 days to reach the search zone. Ships and planes from Egypt, Greece, Britain, France, and the U.S. and Cyprus have taken part in the search for what's left of Flight 804, scouring the waters roughly halfway between the Greek island of Crete and the Egyptian coast. The waters in the area are 8,000 to 10,000 feet deep.
Oh my gosh, that's 2 miles.
Isn't that?
Shoot.
Egyptian searchers found the first debris from the crash about 180 miles north of the Egyptian coastal city of Alexandria.
Wow.
Officials said the pilot, Mohammed Shukar, was experienced with 6,275 flying hours and said co-pilot Ahmad Hassam had clocked 2,101 hours.
Yeah, that sounds like a cockpit thing. And tourists see a White House gunplay. There's a picture here of some tourists and a policeman with his hand on his gun. In Washington, a Secret Service officer shot a man with a gun who approached a checkpoint outside the White House Friday afternoon. The man refused to drop his weapon. Lines of tourists were frantically ushered away from the area as heavily armed police converged on the publicly accessible shack. The White House was put on lockdown. Vice President Joe Biden was secured inside the complex. President Barack Obama was golfing at Joint Base Andrews at the time. Authorities said the man, who was shot once in the chest, was in critical condition. 2 law enforcement officers identified him as Jesse Oliveri, a Pennsylvanian in his 30s. Police gave no other details about him or what his motive might have been. Oliveri approached the checkpoint on East Street shortly after 3 p.m. and ignored repeated orders from the officer to drop his gun. David Lavati, a Secret Service Deputy Assistant Director, also viewed the scene. The officer fired 1 shot at the man. The gun was recovered. The security alert was lifted an hour later. The gunman never made it inside the White House complex, and no one else was injured. Federal agents found ammunition inside a Toyota sedan parked nearby on Constitution Avenue. They believe the gunman would have driven off after shooting. Friday's episode was yet another in a series of security incidents in recent years at or near the White House grounds. It took place against a backdrop of heightened tensions fed by terrorist attacks, the ongoing wars in the Middle East and Afghanistan, the investigation of the crash of an Egyptian passenger jet over the Mediterranean Sea has raised terrorist questions. Law enforcement officials said there was no immediate sign that the Friday incident was connected to terrorism. Sightseer Jenna Noel of Texas said she had just taken a photo of the White House when she noticed a man harassing an agent. As we were walking away, we heard a shot fired. Then some people started running away, and agents had guns and were evacuating people. I had a panic attack, she said. I'm doing okay now, but it was pretty freaky to be right there a second before it happened. Agents with the Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, and Firearms were helping to trace the man's weapon, according to an agency spokesman.
Something, isn't it?
Yeah.
Thank you, Jean. And in some world briefs from New Delhi, a city in western India has suffered through the country's highest recorded temperature,
I know,
a scorching 123.8 degrees.
Oh, man.
The record was set Thursday in the city of Palodi in the western state of Rajasthan. India's meteorological department said the previous high was 123, reached in 1956 in the city of Alwar, also in Rajasthan.
Wow.
Indian authorities have issued a severe heat alert for the next 2 to several days, and in several states. That means the areas can expect temperatures of 116.6 or more. And from Nigeria, a second girl rescued by Nigeria's military in a forest battle with Islamic extremists this week had been kidnapped from her home village, not from a school in Chibok where the Boko Haram infamously, snatched some 200 schoolgirls in 2014. The girl is the daughter of a pastor who was kidnapped by the Boko Haram, but officials say they were unsure when. I'm glad they rescued her. And from Jerusalem, Israel's defense minister announced his resignation Friday, saying that the governing party had been taken over by extremist and dangerous elements, and that he no longer trusts Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu. I love to say his last name.
I know.
Are they onomatopoeias in the English language that have make the sound of the word? I can't
I've
remember.
heard of that, but I don't know how it
That's
works.
what it reminds me of. With
Yeah,
his name.
that does, yeah.
The departure of Moshe Yaalon deepens the cabinet split between the security establishment and hardline politicians. Netanyahu reportedly intends to appoint Foreign Minister Avigdor, that's an interesting name, Lieberman, to the post. Lieberman is one of Israel's most polarizing politicians. If that happens, command of the ministry will transform from a general who led one of Israel's most elite commando units to a politician who held the rank of corporal. And finally, from Paris, the last known survivor of the team that carried out the November Paris attacks refused to talk during questioning Friday by anti-terrorism judges, and the session ended abruptly. Salah Abdesalam's lawyer, Frank Burton, said his client invoked his right to silence. Abdesalam, 26, said he wanted to explain all. Burton said Abdesalam was disturbed by the 24-hour video surveillance in his maximum security cell. Friday was the first time he was questioned since his return from Belgium last month.
He will talk, I bet.
Oh, yeah.
And the Zika virus is on the doorstep of Africa. The virus, now believed to have infected 7,500 people on Cape Verde, an island nation off the western coast of Africa, is the same strain that is spreading fear through the Americas. Zika's emergence near Africa raises new concern because many of the nearby countries on the continent have poor healthcare systems. This was laid bare by the Ebola epidemic that ravaged Sierra Leone. The findings are of concern because it is further proof that the outbreak is spreading beyond South America. In the United States, President Barack Obama said Friday that Congress must act quickly. Excuse me while I go on here. I think it's on another page here. Okay, here we go. The president said we must take care to get eradication and health care for people infected by the virus. Congress needs to get me a bill, he said. It needs to get me a bill that has sufficient funds to do the job. The House and Senate have been arguing over how much money to provide. Meanwhile, the Federal Centers for Disease Control said the number of pregnant women in the United States infected by Zika was 3 times the figures reported last week. The government is reporting cases 157 instead of 48. Previously, officials had reported how many pregnant women had Zika symptoms and positive blood tests. Now they announced it will count all women who tested positive regardless of symptoms. Experts emphasize that in fact there does not appear to be any dramatic increase in infection among pregnant women in the United States. There was a spike in diagnoses in February and March, but relatively few new cases since then. Cape Verde, which reported its first Zika case in October, is a former Portuguese colony like Brazil. The mosquito-borne virus emerged last year before spreading to nearly 60 countries. Already, 3 babies on the island near Africa have developed microencephaly, the same birth defect that has left babies with undersized brains and skulls in Brazil. Most people infected with Zika suffer no symptoms, but authorities in Brazil have seen a dramatic increase in severe brain-related birth defects among babies whose mothers were infected. This year, health officials conclude that Zika indeed causes more and more birth defects. One of the babies believed to have contracted the Zika virus in Cape Verde was born at a hospital in Boston. A paper said Friday that health officials in the Cape Verde region should start warning pregnant mothers to take precaution against mosquito bites. Obama expressed frustration that Congress has been so slow to act on his request for about $1.9 billion to prepare for the virus. The House has passed a separate bill offering $622 million. All that the House has done is say that you can rob Peter to pay Paul, Obama said. Care for children born with microencephaly may cost $10 million each over their lifetimes.
And from Caracas, Venezuela, a citizen mob that didn't know at first what Roberto Bernal had done, but he was running, and that was enough. Dozens of men loitering on the sidewalk next to the supermarket kicked and punched the 42-year-old until he was bloodied and semi-conscious. After all, they had been robbed of cell phones, wallets, motorcycles over the years, and they thought Bernal had a criminal's face. Then a stooped, white-haired man trailing behind them told them he'd been mugged. The mob went through Bernal's pockets and handed a wad of bills to the old man, the equivalent of $5. They doused Bernal's head and chest in gasoline and flicked a lighter.
God.
And they stood back as he burned alive. We wanted to teach this man a lesson, said Eduardo Mojeras, 29. We're tired of being robbed every time we go out on the street and the police do nothing. Vigilante violence against people accused of stealing has become commonplace in this crime-ridden country of 30 million, once one of the richest and safest in Latin America. The revenge attacks underscore how far Venezuela's society has fallen. with the lights flickering out daily and food shortages causing supermarket lines that snake for blocks. The economy is unraveling, and with it, its social fabric. Life here has become misery. You walk around and always stressed, always scared, and lynching offers a collective catharsis, said Roberto Bryce Leon, director of the Venezuelan Violence Observatory, an independent research nonprofit. You can't do anything about the lines or the inflation, but for one moment, at least a mob feels like it can make a difference. Reports of group beatings now surface weekly in local media. A majority of the country supports mob retribution as a form of self-protection, according to the polling by the observatory. Venezuela is now one of the highest homicide rates in the world. It's hard to find a person who hasn't been mugged. A quiet man, Bernal lived his whole life in a maze of narrow staircases and cheerfully painted cinder block shacks built into the hills above Caracas. This kind of slum is home for about half of Venezuelans, who bear the brunt of the country's collapsing economy. The shanty towns draped over the capital have not seen running water for months, and residents have begun raiding passing trucks for food. Bernal had been out of work and recently confided to his sisters that he and his wife were struggling to feed their 3 children. That morning, he left the family's windowless shack before dawn. He told his wife he was on the way to a new job at a restaurant, but he stopped near a bank beneath a billboard advertising door-to-door delivery of scarce goods from Miami. A man in his 70s walked out, tucking a stack of bills worth $5 into a baseball cap that he then hid in his jacket. Bernal grabbed the cash and started running toward a taxi line where dozens of motorcycles were parked. The robbery victim later told investigators he pursued him, crying thief. The motorcycle drivers were sitting on a low wall in front of the supermarket, fiddling with cracked cell phones and drinking coffee from small plastic cups. They watched as the pair came toward them. When the beating began, the workers at the curbside candy stalls and hot dog stands left their booths, not wanting to see what was coming. Other people stayed to watch and cheer. Bernal probably would have died right there if not for Alejandro Delgado. The youth pastor arrived for his part-time job as a motorcycle taxi driver just as the frenzy was reaching its peak. Horrified, he whipped off his sooty black jacket and smothered the flames. "These guys I work with every day, and they turned into demons," he said. "When I put the fire out, they threw bottles at my head."
Yeah.
Bernal was taken away in an ambulance in a quest to find a hospital with enough medical supplies to deal with his injuries. The videos spread across social media, but they drew curiously little condemnation. Even the trauma nurse who attended to Bernal thought a kind of justice had been carried out. He died 2 days later. Bernal's family members began making regular trips to the prosecutor's office. They hoped their presence would shame officials into holding someone accountable for the April 4th killing. To their surprise, a month after his death, 23-year-old law school dropout Michael Jimenez was charged with pouring the gasoline. Like Bernal, he had never been in trouble with the law before, but coworkers say he'd been upset because people had been stealing helmets and motorcycle batteries. Bernal's blood still stains the motorcycle taxi time sign above the cracked sidewalk where he was burned. The men say they won't wash it off. It's their trophy to one of the criminals who have made the city a life of cauldron of stress and fear. "People can try to make us look bad," said Francisco Agro, 29, a taxi driver, who said he participated in the beating. "But the truth is, the courts, the police, they don't work. It's not the way things should be, but it fell to us to protect an old man from a thug." The family still does not believe Bernal robbed anyone, but it agrees with his killers in one point: there's no justice there.
Wow.
Wow, isn't it amazing? I mean, we're so lucky to live where we live sometimes.
Cancer, bad behavior may cause cancer.
Really?
Yeah. Well, yeah, health things that you do.
Oh.
Roughly half of cancer deaths in the United States could be prevented if all Americans quit smoking, cut back on drinking, maintained a healthful weight, and got at least 150 minutes of exercise a week. These same steps also would reduce the number of new cancer diagnoses by 40 to 70%. For men, universal embrace of this lifestyle could avert or delay 67% of cancer deaths and prevent 63% of new malignancies. If all the nation's women did the same, their yearly cancer mortality rates would fall by 59%. The findings published online in the medical journal JAMA Oncology underscore how much public health measures could cut into a disease that claims 600,000 Americans a year. The study findings challenged research published last year that said as many as 80% of cancers might be contributable to factors beyond the control of individuals, just like as a bad luck type diagnosis. The new research, in contrast, offers evidence that bad behavior trumps bad luck as a cause of cancer. The latest results suggest that the most effective way to fight cancer is to promote healthful cancer-preventing habits. Doing so could reap even bigger gains than investing in biomedical research to improve cancer vaccines. Primary prevention could remain a priority for cancer control. Changing America's unhealthy habits might seem an easier task than inventing new cancer-fighting strategy. About 17% of U.S. adults, roughly 40 million, continue to smoke. And roughly 60% of Americans consume at least one or more alcoholic drinks a day. 38% of American adults are obese. Regular exercise is not an easy sell to a sedentary public. About 22% of American adults report that they participate in no physical activity. Only 1 in 5 meets the government's recommended guidelines for aerobic, physical, and muscle strengthening activity. As a society, we need to avoid procrastination. Instead, they wrote, we must embrace the opportunity to reduce cancer. Efforts to promote these changes will be our fastest return in cancer research.
Interesting.
Yeah, that much of it, prevention. That's amazing.
And liquid wire inspired by spider silk. I have to read
Oh,
this.
wow.
If you want to truly understand how something works, you should take it apart and try to put it back together again. That's exactly what scientists from the University of Oxford and Pierre and Marie Curie University did with one of nature's most fascinating materials, spider silk. In a paper published this week in the Proceedings of the National Academy of Sciences, they report on a novel man-made material that replicates intriguing properties of the stuff spiders use to weave their webs. It acts as both a solid and a liquid, which is as nuts as it sounds. When testing the capture of spiral of an orb's weaver's web, the part that catches flies, the researchers found that the silk is quite stretchy, which wasn't surprising. But when they slackened the thread, they found that the silk failed to sag in the middle. It just kept adapting to the new length, remaining taut as if it were shrinking.
Huh.
We know of materials that behave like this, but these are not solids, they are liquids, said Arnaud Antoine of the Pierre and Marie Curie University. By coating a plastic filament with tiny droplets of oil, the researchers were able to create a liquid wire that exhibited the same behavior, confirming their hypothesis that this was the interaction between the silk fiber's elasticity and the surface tension of the glue droplets covering it that made this strange material possible. Instead of sagging, the excess thread is looped into tiny droplets, keeping the overall structure taut. In fact, they were able to replicate the mechanism with nearly any filament liquid combo they tried. The thousands of tiny droplets of glue that cover the capture spiral of the spider's orb web do much more than make the silk sticky and catch the fly, said the author. Surprisingly, each drop packs enough punch in its watery skins to reel in loose bits of thread. And with this winching behavior is used to an excellent effect to keep the threads tight at all times, as we can observe and test in the webs in our garden, that's for sure. The researchers produced liquid wire to confirm their understanding of spider silk, but their artificial version might have applications outside of the lab. After all, spider silk itself, incredibly thin and strong, is a material that plenty of folks would love to replicate. For humans, the researchers said that their discovery, essentially a whole class of composite materials, could inspire aid in the design of many technologies, from toxin catchers to artificial muscles for soft robots. Spider silk has been known to be extraordinary materials for around 40 years, but it continues to amaze us. While the web is simply a high-tech trap from the spider's point of view, its properties have huge amounts to offer the world of materials, engineering, and medicine, he said. Our bio-inspired hybrid threads could be manufactured from virtually any components. These new insights could lead to a wide range of applications, such as microfabrication of complex structures, reversible micromotors, or self-tension stretchable systems. Isn't that interesting?
It
how they
is.
learn from nature.
We've learned a lot from animals, all kinds of stuff. And in local news, a woman is fined $100 for using a grill that ignited an apartment blaze. This fire displaced 23 people and caused $225,000 in damage. An Omaha woman charged with having a forbidden grill on an apartment balcony was fined after the city officials said it was the first time he can recall that violation of a fire code was enforced. Jan Wilson, 51, was sentenced with the April 12th fire at Maple Ridge Apartments. Tom Mumford, an interim city prosecutor, said it was the first time that he has had a case like this. The Omaha Fire Code prohibits using an open flame cooking device atop combustible material or within 10 feet of combustible construction. The two-alarm fire last month, which caused $225,000 in damage, started on a balcony outside a third-floor apartment at 11127 Cottonwood Plaza, southwest of 108th Street and West Maple Road. The fire set off by the charcoal grill grew quickly, partly collapsing the roof of the apartment building before being brought under control. The Red Cross said 23 people were displaced, though no injuries were reported.
And honor and a touch of joy. I have to tell you, there's a picture of a little baby girl, about 1 year old, on the picture of the cover of the World Herald today, everyone, and she is beautiful. She has a pretty dress and tights and a sweater on, and her hair's in a headband with a blue bow. And that's Carrie Orozco's daughter, who's 1, and she looks just like
She's
her.
adorable.
And she's sitting on the back of a horse statue, and it says, Olivia Ruth Orozco, wearing a blue headband, smiled as Hector Orozco hoisted her up to sit on the saddle of her mother's blue horse statue. The words "Heart of a Warrior" are emblazoned on the back of the saddle. The images of prominent Omaha buildings cover one side of the horse, while the other side features blue roses, a nod to Officer Carrie Orozco's service with the Omaha Police Department, as well as there's beautiful birds of peace on it. Friday was the 1-year anniversary of the day Orozco was fatally shot as she and other law enforcement officers tried to arrest a fugitive. The Horses of Honor ceremony at Turner Park on Friday morning unveiled 8 painted horses honoring fallen officers. 7 of the horses are dedicated to specific officers, 3 killed in the line of duty, 4 felled by health problems. 1 horse is dedicated to all fallen officers. A bronze statue of a dog is for Cobus, the first Omaha police dog killed in the line of duty. Police Chief Todd Schmader said he was honored to have the horses at Turner Park for 1 year so the public can remember officers. Behind the scenes of every officer, there's a story, he said. That gives you an opportunity to see the story of 7 of our fallen officers. Next spring, the horses will be sold, with the profits proceeding to the Omaha Police
that'll be nice.
Foundation.
Huh.
R. Faye Thompson admired the silver horse adorned with pastel-colored designs and a portrait of her son, Omaha Police Officer Tori Gully. Words can't describe it, Thompson said after seeing the horse for the first time. It's really a good tribute to the fallen. Gully died in 2013 after collapsing during a morning workout. Mary Polreese attended with other family members to honor her sister-in-law, Detective Dawn Polreese, who died of cancer in 2012. It's awesome, she said. It doesn't let their memory fade. And it says, read the accounts of the deaths of the 25 officers who are inscribed on the Omaha Police Department's memorial wall. You go to www.omaha.com. And it just has an article about every single policeman.
Wow.
And the officers were Officers Kerry Orozco, Officers Greg Hamill, Officer Tori Gully, Officer Don Polreese, Officer Kirk Tynes, Sergeant Jason Ty Pratt, if you remember him. He was shot while he did a police stop.
Mm-hmm.
Officer James Jimmy Wilson. No, I'm sorry, it was Wilson that died. And K9 Cobus.
Wow.
Yeah.
And 10 are sickened by mumps at Midwest University. 10 cases of mumps have been reported among students at Midland University in Fremont. A health advisory sent to healthcare providers in Nebraska said the students involved had been vaccinated. It also advised that the outbreak could potentially spread to other areas as students return home for summer. The health advisory asked healthcare workers to be on the lookout for cases of mumps and to contact their local health department. The first case was reported on April 16th, the most recent on May 13th. Midland University is aware of the reported cases. The university requires immunization and has worked closely with health officials to ensure that all students have been vaccinated. The effectiveness of the mumps component of the measles, mumps, and rubella vaccine can wane over time. The Midland students involved in the outbreak had received the 2 standard doses. The Federal Center for Disease Prevention recommends that children get the first dose at 12 to 15 months of age and the second at 4 to 6 years of age. A third dose is not routinely advised but can be administered during large outbreaks. The director of Three Rivers Public Health Department said there have been 2 cases of mumps reported in the state this year. She said mumps has been recently reported at other universities. Mumps is a viral illness that causes swelling of glands in the face and neck. Symptoms may include earache, jaw pain, testicular pain, fever, and muscle aches. The virus is spread through saliva or mucus from the mouth, nose, or throat. It can be spread through coughing, sneezing, talking, and sharing cups. Antibiotics are not a treatment option. However, symptoms like pain and fever can be addressed. The Three Rivers Department recommended that anyone with symptoms refrain from public activities and be seen by a physician. People with the virus are considered the most contagious during the 3 days before and the 5 days after the onset of the symptoms.
Thank you. And a 15-year-old boy, his older sister, and another woman plotted via Facebook to steal drugs from a Central High student, prosecutors said Friday. The arrangement left 18-year-old Gustavo Soto dead, slumped over in a car with a gunshot wound, just days before he was to graduate from Central, authorities said. A moment of silence was observed for him at the graduation ceremony on Thursday. The teen suspect, Antonio Bordeaux, is charged with first-degree murder and use of a weapon to commit a felony in conjunction with his death. Douglas County Judge Thomas Harmon denied bail for him. He turned 16 on Wednesday, 2 days after the shooting. Authorities issued an arrest warrant Friday for his sister, Ashley Bordeaux, 22, on the same charges. Later in the day, she had not been reported arrested. Her mother, Christine Bordeaux, is serving a 20-year prison sentence for posing as a prostitute and luring men to a robbery that led to both men's deaths. 10 days later, she took part in another robbery with her cousin, Nico Jenkins, that led to the death of an Omaha woman. The third suspect, Karina Rodriguez Lopez, 18, was charged Friday with first-degree murder. Omaha police officers who interviewed her said she told them of the plan to rob Soto. She told police that Antonio Bordeaux was the gunman, the prosecutor said. In court, a guardian appeared in Bordeaux's behalf. His father was in West Virginia federal prison, according to court documents. Bordeaux, wiping sweat off his face, told the judge that he doesn't go to school. He was a sophomore at Bellevue West High School, attending from August 15th to February 2016, a district spokeswoman said. Bordeaux was also being sought in juvenile warrant that charges him with being an uncontrollable juvenile. According to the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children's website, he had been missing since January. He has faced several criminal allegations since he was 11. The most egregious was that he stole a motor vehicle worth at least $5,000 at age 11.
Oh.
The charge was later dismissed. He has run away from home, police, or group home on multiple occasions and has been charged with disturbing the peace twice. A Douglas County prosecutor said Rodriguez Lopez orchestrated the plot against Soto through the Facebook posting. Judge Stephanie Hansen denied her bail. In a separate case, she is facing criminal impersonation charges in connection with a traffic accident in July 2015 in which 2 people suffered minor injuries. The prosecutor said she gave authorities her sister's name at the accident scene. Bail was set at 10% of $10,000 in the criminal impersonation case. A public defender said Rodriguez Lopez is a native Omahan who completed 11th grade and has no previous convictions. Both Rodriguez Lopez and Bordeaux have preliminary hearings set for July 5th. The intersection where Soto was slain was near where Brandon Phelps and Jason Starr were shot excuse me, in an SUV in December 1st. It's just a few blocks from the drive-by killing of Jarrell Haynes in March. I'm telling you, when is it going to end?
I don't know. And from the Mike Kelly column, Zumper, an apartment search company, this week ranked Omaha number 8 out of 260 largest U.S. cities as the best city for new college graduates. That tracked closely with a 2016 ranking from Forbes. It placed the Omaha Council Bluffs metro area number 12 among the best cities for young professionals. Omaha makes sense for young pros, Forbes said, if it is simple quality of life and a corporate job. Among what it calls Omaha's Fab Five corporations, Forbes includes ConAgra Foods, which still maintains a strong presence despite moving its headquarters to Chicago, Berkshire Hathaway, Union Pacific, Kiewit Corporation, and Mutual of Omaha. Zumper, meanwhile, gives Omaha a rating of A+ for this year's graduates. The website says Omaha's strong economy translates into competitive graduate incomes, low unemployment, and low rent burden. And another short story. Kenneth Wentz of Omaha has achieved a lot in his life. Today he has another distinction, a college degree at the age of 93. It's an honorary Bachelor of Science degree from Bellevue University. It's in recognition of his service to his country, his interest in education, and his private sector and devotion to his family. He didn't like his given name, Melbourne Kenneth Wentz, and enlisted in the Army in 1942 as Kenneth Michael Wentz. In World War II, he flew in the Ball turret on 30 bombing missions in the Pacific. He received 2 Distinguished Flying Crosses. In 1948, he re-enlisted in the Air Force, lived in Japan, and was assigned to Offutt Air Force Base. He took a job with a defense contractor and lived for a time in Washington, D.C. The elder Ken had earned college credits over the years, but was short of graduation. His wife, known as Mary C., died in 1999. A grandson, an attorney, says his grandpa honors her memory every day. The university said it is pleased to honor Ken Wentz, whose one regret was that he was not able to complete his college education. And another one, Peyton Manning's Omaha calls at the line of scrimmage have inspired the name of a new beer. The Denver Post reports that the beer contains oats, representing the horse-themed mascots of the 2 teams, the Indianapolis Colts and the Denver Bronco. The beer's name is Oat Maha. Yeah.
That's the name of the beer?
Oat Maha.
Like it's made out of oats?
Yeah.
Oh, interesting. Okay, and Caitlin Albus won't throw the curve that Peanuts have thrown at her. Caitlin, 10, will toss the first pitch Monday at the Omaha Storm Chasers Peanut Free Night. Peanuts will not be sold, nor will Cracker Jack, in order to foster public awareness of the peanut allergy problem. Peanut Free Night also allows kids like Caitlin to attend a baseball game. She and some other children have the allergy so severely that their parents keep them away from ball games and other events at which peanuts are sold. When they lived in Pittsburgh, Caitlin's parents, Laura and Greg Albus, had season tickets to Pirates games, but one of them would always stay home with Caitlin. Nevertheless, she has practiced her pitching with her dad. She denied that she'd thrown a curveball. I don't know any kind of pitches except a regular pitch, she said. The Storm Chasers Werner Park, excuse me, I have to find that article now because it's all set up. Well, I don't know where that
It's
one
disappeared up.
went. Yeah, so I'm going to go to another one.
Yeah.
Sorry, everyone. From Bancroft. Preparing meals for dozens of children every day, knowing that some of them won't like the food, is part of a job of being a school cook. Becky Wortman has been doing this long enough not to take it personally. You can't please everybody, Wortman told the Sioux City Journal. She doesn't let it bother her. What bothers her are the hairnets. Wortman does not like wearing hairnets. I hate the hairnets, she said. On Thursday, Wortman will wear the hated hairnet for the last time as she prepares and serves her final meal after 34 years in the food service at Bancroft Rosalie Public School. May is the time when another school year ends, along with long careers spent inside those schools. We often hear the beloved teachers or principals who are retiring. But inside every school are people like Wortman, food service workers, secretaries, custodians, bus drivers, and others. They're not teachers, but many of these workers have spent decades working there, performing important tasks that keep every school running smoothly. Tasks like preparing meals to give students the energy needed to pay attention and learn. We're not just cooks, we're a vital part of the educational system, Wortman said. And in Wortman's case, she's loved just about every minute of working in the kitchen. First in Rosalie began in 1982 and then in Bancroft after the schools consolidated in 83. For the past 30 years, she's been in the district's food service manager, entrusted with making sure the lunches, and since 2001, breakfast too, served to 250 to 270 students every day, are healthy and hopefully tasty. I think for the most part they like it, she said. We just do their favorites and balance it through the week. It's a tough balancing act. Nutrition guidelines change. New foods and ingredients get added that have requirements, but not only those to the student satisfaction. Sweet potato fries were one of those experiments until the high school students piled all the uneaten fries onto a couple of trays and returned them at the end of the lunch period to make their point. They just don't want them, Wortman said. There are plenty of items that are much more popular than the sweet potatoes. Chili and cinnamon rolls are always popular. Homemade pizza is a big hit. Students like taco and super nacho bars too. You need to follow the regulations, but you need to feed the kids too. Keep them happy and give them healthy choices. And document it all. Wortman won't miss all the record keeping that goes into planning meals and ordering commodities. It's hard enough to cook and clean up the kitchen afterwards. You're on your feet a lot, lifting a lot of heavy things, Wortman said. It's a lot of stressful, heavy work. And it's fun. Working in the kitchen allowed Wortman to see her own children, her own grandchildren in school every day. To get in with the school was kind of nice, Wortman said, whose mother was a teacher. She also has a sister teaching here. The school system's been in my blood. Wortman's husband, Jerry, retired from farming a couple years ago, and they'll continue to enjoy traveling and camping. Wortman will happily hang up the hairnet, but will take many fond memories with her. That's a nice story.
If confirmed, an Indian historic site may delay a pipeline running through Iowa. Discovery of an archaeological site that may have cultural significance to Native Americans could further delay construction of a $3.8 billion oil pipeline if government officials require the route to be moved. Houston-based Dakota wants to build the pipeline designed to carry 500,000 barrels of oil a day from northwest North Dakota to a storage facility in Illinois. Construction was begun in North Dakota, South Dakota, and Illinois, but the Iowa Utilities Board has not authorized work to begin. On Friday, Iowa State archaeologist John Duerschuk said his office had received information indicating a possible Native American site in northwest Iowa that could result in relocation of the pipeline. He said that these construction activities may be shifted. Final approval for the Iowa section is pending. The Corps of Engineers must issue permits for the pipeline to cross the Missouri and Mississippi River and haven't issued those permits. Iowa was the last state to issue a permit for the pipeline. Last week, the company said it has started to lay pipe this week to finish before winter. This Corps' main goal is to avoid impact to the environment and historical sites. That means they often have to work around the area. If this is a significant Indian site, which I hope it is, they certainly could delay the permit process. Dakota Access spokeswoman said the company will continue to work with the agencies, hopefully to get the pipeline across Iowa. Yay.
Yeah. You say that with so much support.
Another one of those Nebraska pipeline deals.
No. And in Iowa City, an inmate convicted of murder in 1984 will not get a new trial, even though the prosecution relied on a discredited FBI bullet matching science. The Iowa Supreme Court ruled Friday. Jurors probably would have found Glendale Moore guilty, even if inaccurate FBI testimony linking the bullet in his possession to the bullets that killed the victim had been included, the court ruled in a 7-0 decision. Justices said they were troubled by the invalid science and other prosecutorial misconduct, including the failure to disclose a reward to a juvenile officer who placed Moore at the crime scene. Yet we cannot conclude that Moore's trial, even though flawed, was fundamentally unfair in light of the entire record, which points in the direction of Moore's guilt, Justice Brent Apel wrote. Moore is serving a life sentence since 1983 for the slaying of his girlfriend, Juanita Townsend, who was found shot to death in her car outside a Davenport car dealership. Now 73, Moore is at the Fort Dodge Correctional Institution. He filed for post-conviction relief in 2007 after FBI disavowed compositional bullet lead analysis, which had been used in thousands of cases. The technique that used chemistry to try and link bullets found at crime scenes to others in the possession of suspects based on their elemental characteristics. The FBI stopped using the technique in 2005 after scientific reviews concluded that it was unreliable. At Moore's trials, prosecutors argued that bullets covered from Townsend's head and car were a match for a bullet found in Moore's pocket days later. A nurse found the bullet on Moore at a psychiatric unit, where he was placed after exhibiting bizarre behavior in the hours after Townsend's death. An FBI agent implied in testimony that all three bullets must have come from the same box of cartridges. A defense expert countered that the FBI's interpretation of the science was not supported by forensic chemists. But a prosecutor told jurors in his closing argument that the FBI had been using the technique for a long time and that the agent was confident when he testified the bullets match. In 2009, the FBI acknowledged the testimony in Moore's case exceeds the limits of science and cannot be supported. Apple wrote the FBI's avowal of the technique amounts to new evidence, but that probably wouldn't have changed the outcome. He cited strong circumstances evidence against Moore, including that he was with Townsend minutes before her death at a grocery store and that she'd been planning to leave him. Moore was struggling financially and was a beneficiary on Townsend's recently acquired life insurance policy. More certainly, he had motive, he had the means, he was at the right place at the right time, and his behavior generally and repeatedly points in the direction of guilt. It was the third time courts have found that Moore's prosecution, but have declined to alter his conviction. In 1985, the Iowa Court of Appeals ruled that prosecutors violated doctor-patient privilege by calling a nurse and psychiatrist to testify. In 1999, the same court ruled that prosecutors failed to disclose that they offered a 13-year-old offender a $350 reward for his testimony. The witnesses testified that he was at the dealership looking for a car to steal when he heard 2 gunshots and saw Moore trying to set Townsend's car on fire. Witnesses recanted his testimony years later, but a judge called the recantation completely incredible. Apple said those errors undermine confidence in our system of justice.
Wow.
And now we should probably start with the deaths and funerals. And we'll start with the Omaha World Herald. Brewer, Edward D. Brewer, age 69. Services Tuesday at 10 a.m. at St. Adalbert Catholic Church. Arrangements provided by the John A. Gentleman Mortuary, Bellevue, Sarpy County Chapel. Brown, Mary Margaret Brown. I'm sorry, there's no age. Funeral service will be at 11 a.m. Saturday with visitation 1 hour before. Arrangements provided by the West Lawn Hillcrest Memorial Park Funeral Home. You would have to assume that the funeral service was at the funeral home because it doesn't say.
Oh, yeah.
Buckley, Viola A. Dolly Hangley Buckley, age 84. A celebration of life will be 10:30 a.m. Monday at the Brahmin Mortuary at 72nd Street Chapel. Arrangements provided by the Brahmin Mortuary, 72nd Street Chapel. Bushen, James M. Jimmy Bushen, age 55. Visitation will be 2 to 4 Sunday at Forest Lawn Funeral Home. It will be a private burial. Arrangements provided by the Forest Lawn Funeral Home and Crematory. Feynman, Cleo R. Feynman, age 90, of Schuyler, Nebraska. Funeral Mass will be 10:30 a.m. Monday, May 23rd at St. Augustine's Catholic Church. Arrangements provided by the Swoboda Funeral Home. Gun Bonner, Terrence Laron Man Gun Bonner, age 22. Funeral Tuesday, May 24th, 11 a.m. at Love Deliverance Temple. Arrangements provided by the Kramer Funeral Home. Jackson, Ollie B. Peaches Jackson, age 73. And celebrating her life Sunday, May 22nd at 3 p.m. at the Lake Point Building. Casti, Marion M. Casti, age 82. Funeral will be Monday at 10 a.m. at Holy Ghost Church. Arrangements provided by the Carrasco Larkin Staskowitz Funeral Home. Crank, Sharon R. Crank, age 73, of Elkhorn. Funeral service 11 a.m. Tuesday at the funeral home in Elkhorn. Memorials to the American Cancer Society. Arrangements provided by the Reichmuth Funeral Home. Lance, Dean Lance III, age 26. Services will be 10 a.m. Tuesday at the Forest Lawn Funeral Home. Arrangements provided by the Forest Lawn Funeral Home and Crematory. Lomax, Rita Josephine Lomax, age 89. There's no formal services at this time. Arrangements by the Trevino Smith Funeral Home in Bryan, Texas. Marish, Dwayne C. Marish, age 92. A memorial service Tuesday, 11 a.m. at 72nd Street Chapel. Memorials to the charity of the Donor's Choice. Arrangements provided by the John A. Gentleman Mortuary, 72nd Street Chapel. Malone, Sam A. Malone. A complete notice will be later. Arrangements by Heafy Hoffman de Dvorak Cutler. Risk, Karen G. Risk, age 67. Services Tuesday, May 24th at 11 a.m. at the mortuary. Memorials to the Alzheimer's Association. Arrangements provided by the Heafy Hoffman de Dvorak Cutler Chapel. Stressman, Ted J. Stressman, age 85. Mass of Christian burial, 10 a.m. St. Joan of Arc Church on Saturday. Arrangements provided by Heafy Hoffman de Dvorak Cutler. Ann Sum, age 100. Funeral service Monday, 1 p.m. at the mortuary. Arrangements provided by the Carrasco Larkin Staskowitz Funeral Home. Thomas Kywich, Judith A. Thomas Kywich, age 74. Mass of Christian burial Tuesday, 10 a.m. at the church, which would be the Holy Ghost Catholic Church. Memorials are requested to the Holy Ghost Catholic Church or the American Cancer Society. Arrangements provided by the Bethany Funeral Home. Youngman, Linda Louise Inman Youngman, age 67. Private interment in Harlan, Iowa. Services will be Saturday, today, at 10 a.m. at the Lutheran Church of the Master. Arrangements provided by the Heaphy Hoffman DeWar Cutler Chapel.
And Lincoln Star, Abraham, Virginia, Abraham, widow, 75 years old, service 10:30 a.m. Saturday, June 11th at the Lutheran Church in Lincoln. Memorials to the family. Bailey, Dwayne Bailey, 71 of Omaha. That one's probably been read. Blum, Daryl Blum, aged 84 of York. And memorials may be directed to Mission Central. Funeral service 10 a.m. Saturday, May 21st, St. John's Lutheran Church, Metz Mortuary. Bowers, Harold Bowers of Friend, Nebraska, 83 years old. Service 10 a.m. Saturday, May 21st, United Church of Christ in Friend, Laubermore Funeral Home. Bachman, Diane Bachman, age 71 of Lincoln, Lincoln Memorial Funeral Home. Card, Jill Marie Card, 56 of Roca. Service 10 a.m. Saturday, Heartland Church in Roca. Memorials to the family, Roper and Sons Mortuary. Cassini, Brett Ranford Cassini, 59 of Lincoln. No service at this time. And memorials to the University of Nebraska Foundation. Engel, Shirley Beth Engel of Dual County, South Dakota. No service are planned at this time. Doesn't give her age. Fink, Margaret Fink, 93 of Hebron. Service 10 a.m. Saturday, May 21st, Sacred Heart Church, Hebron. Memorials to the Church Cemetery Fund, Price Funeral Home. Fisher, Helen Fisher, 82 of Lincoln. Service 10 a.m. Saturday, Temple Baptist Church. Memorials to the church, Roper and Sons Mortuary. Gondolfi, Robert Gondolfi, 79 of Lincoln. U.S. Air Force vet. Service 11:30 a.m. Saturday, May 21st, Calvary United Church, Lincoln Memorial Funeral Home. Harnish, Delwyn Harnish, 66 of Lincoln. Service 10 a.m. Monday, 5/23, Messiah Lutheran Church, Roper and Sons Mortuary. Heritage, Ronald Heritage, 50 of Lincoln. Private family service will be had, Buthurst Mason and Love Funeral Home. Jensen, Christina Jensen, 53. Memorial service 1 p.m. Monday, 5/23 at Roper and Sons Chapel. Kazmarczyk, Michael Kazmarczyk, 47 of Lincoln. Service 10 a.m. Saturday, 5/21 at Roper and Sons Mortuary. Kelly, David A. Kelly of Lincoln, age 59. Lamb, May V. Lamb, 95 of Unadilla. Service 10:30 a.m. Saturday, May 21st, Unadilla United Methodist Church. Fusselman Alley Harvey Funeral Home. Matthews, Cecil Matthews, 82 of Blue Springs. Excuse me, a service at a later date. Laughlin Funeral Home. McEntarfer, Beverly McEntoffer of Lincoln, age 77. McKinney, Jean E. McKinney, 90 of Lincoln. Service Monday, May 23rd at 10 a.m. Lincoln Memorial Funeral Home. Parker, Wilbur Parker, aged 87. Service 11 a.m. Saturday, May 21st, Blessed Sacrament Church, Creamer Funeral Home. Sladek, Janice Betty Sladek, 69 of Crete. Service 10:30 a.m. Saturday, May 21st, Kunsel Funeral Home in Crete. Slump, Charles D. Slump, age 75 of Plattsmouth. Stevens, Margaret R. Stevens, age 84 of Crete. Service will be held 7 p.m. Friday, was held 7 p.m. Friday, May 20th at Lincoln Memorial Funeral Home. And Sutton, Claude Donald Sutton, born 1944, Buthurst Mason and Love Funeral Home. Service at a later date. Vogues. Norma M. Vogues, 54. Ward. Helen Ward, age 90 of Lincoln. Service 10:30 a.m. May 21st at Wyuka Cemetery. Wells. Dorothy Wells, 63 of Lincoln. Service 10:30 a.m. Friday, May 27th at Angelic Temple Church. Wyuka Funeral Home. And last, Wiedenfeld. Mary Ann Wiedenfeld, age 72 of Hickman. Service 11 a.m. Saturday, May 21st at Wentz Funeral Home in Hartington.
Listeners' memorials to the Radio Talking Book Network are tax deductible and will go a long way in keeping the Radio Talking Book on the air. Please keep Radio Talking Book in mind when memorials are listed as donor's choice or your favorite charity. Donations should be sent to Radio Talking Book Network, 7101 Newport Avenue, Suite 205, Omaha, Nebraska, 68152. And we thank you for being a Radio Talking Book Network listener and supporter. Now it's time for our break, and Jean and I will be back with opinion, living, business, and sports.
All right. Well, that brings us to the break. I had a little article from the music section of the Omaha World Herald Go magazine. Debut album, Tara Vaughn. Omaha singer-songwriter delves into love, loss, and what she's learned. Tara Vaughn was going through some things. She was in her mid-20s. She spent time with friends. She spent time at the bar. She wrote songs. She hashed them out at open mics and refined them for bigger gigs. Amid it all, she made mistakes and recovered from them. And so her new album, Dandelion Wine, captures that period in her life. With songs such as Blame It On My Youth and Gotta Get Myself Right, it's an album of self-discovery set forth with Vaughn's smoky and soulful voice. The 10 songs on the album take on love, loss, failing, and finding redemption. Perhaps the most representative is Stay By Me Love, a song begging forgiveness and reminding the listener over and over that I am not my mistakes. It sounds like a rough song. Vaughn wrote it in a few minutes after a particularly difficult time, but it becomes an anthem about realizing that everyone falls down from time to time. Everyone deserves love. I want the same things that everybody else does, she told me. Over tough times come across in lines such as there's not enough whiskey that I can find to soothe my troubles on Gotta Get Myself Right, or the daily description of the jerk from Wolf in Sheep Clothing. Joe Pisapia, formerly of Custer, produced the album at his studio in Nashville, where Vaughn and bandmate Matthew McGowan made 2 trips that lasted more than 2 weeks. At Pisapia's studio, they were immersed in the songs. Vaughn and McGowan slept on the floor in a small loft space in the studio. They stay up late working, and after waking, they get right back to it. Pisapia's production lends itself well to Vaughn's songs. The album feels like a backyard jam session with a few friends where Vaughn is trying out a few new tunes, kind of the way many of these tunes were previewed at open mic nights at Trans Lounge. With Pisapia's work and the potential for a hit in Stay By Me Love, Vaughn seems positioned to do well going forward. But she's not putting pressure on herself. Simply making this album feels like a huge accomplishment, she said. And though she's going to try to push hard to bring its music to as many people as possible, she doesn't want to forget how good of an album she made. I really put all my eggs in this basket, she told me. Now Vaughn plans to throw her keyboard in her car and hit the road. And she was over at the waiting room lounge yesterday, Friday, at 9 p.m. And she was there for her album release party. So, another good little article from the Go magazine section of the Omaha World Herald. Well, that brings us to the end of your break. I want you to remember that this is your Radio Network, your free information network, serving Nebraska and its neighboring states. The Radio Talking Book Network is brought to you with cooperation from KIOS-FM in Omaha and statewide through the NEC Radio Network. Well, that brings us to the end of the break. So I'm going to hand it on over back to the ladies in the studio, and they're going to get going right back on the live reading for you.
Thank you. And we are going to start with the opinion from the Public Pulse. Omaha Grow not worth the cost. It's time for Omaha Grow to go. It loses money for taxpayers, and now that we're sending yard waste to the landfill, we're paying a tipping fee for the weight that used to go to the compost operation. The city of Omaha should stop picking up grass clippings. It should never have been a part of the solid waste removal program. It is not necessary to collect grass. It's a waste of time and money to haul it. Signed, Raymond Muth of Omaha. And Bellevue takes to make Costco plant jobs. The residents of Dodge County don't want the proposed Costco chicken plant built there. I have an idea. Build it in South Bellevue. There's a lot of land there that's zoned for industrial use. The voters of Bellevue approved putting in sewer lines and other infrastructure, and there's a new U.S. Highway 34 bridge, which provides easy access to the interstate. The company could receive chickens from eastern Nebraska, western Iowa, and northern Missouri. More than 1,000 new jobs in Bellevue would be great for the economy. We should welcome this opportunity. Signed, Stephen A. Howard. And I hit up the NCAA, not Omaha. I read in the World Herald that College World Series Omaha is seeking more money for upkeep and upgrades to TD Ameritrade Park. I thought the park paid for itself by hosting the College World Series and some additional college baseball games despite being dark 10 months prior of the year. But if the organization needs more money, why doesn't it ask the NCAA, which recently extended its contract with television networks to show the March Madness basketball tournament for $8.8 billion? Another solution would be to get minor league baseball team like the Lincoln Salt Dogs to play at TD Ameritrade Park in late June, July, and August and September. That would be added revenue and provide jobs. It seems to me that the cost of keeping the CWS by itself downtown is not worth it to Omaha. Signed, Ricky Fulton.
And pesky potholes answering Stan Lessman's question as to whether Omaha's pothole issues are a matter of funding or administrative leadership. It's no longer pothole season. May 13th, Public Pulse. I say they can only be a matter of administrative leadership. I spent $65 on wheel tax, and I am still dodging potholes in May. Where is that money going? It does not appear to be going toward road maintenance. From David Peel of Omaha.
And oil regulators worthy of the praise. The recent Midlands Voices by Adam Peltz of the Environmental Defense Fund underscores what oil producers in Nebraska have known for decades. To quote Peltz, the regulators know their territory, they know their geology, and they know their engineering. These are all critical characteristics to have in the people charged with protecting groundwater from poorly designed and operated wells. During my 50 years plus working in oil exploration and production in multiple states, including Nebraska, the thorough and professional and timely nature of the work of the Nebraska Oil and Gas Conservation Commission has risen above all that of other states' regulatory oversight. The Nebraska Commission has stuck with an appropriate balance between the necessary regulatory oversight and its role as a clearinghouse for information pertaining to historical and recent geological exploration. When a state agency has earned the respect of the industry it regulates and is knowledgeable about environmental advocacy group, it's a good sign that it's doing something right. Signed, Mike Carr, Lincoln, president of the Nebraska Petroleum Producers Association.
And painting the town for 27 years. We greatly enjoyed the May 4th from the archives photo about the 1940 paint blitz by 110 Omaha Union painters. Each August since 1989, Brush Up Nebraska volunteers have been reinforcing the message that many hands make light work. Over the past 27 years, more than 79,600 volunteers have provided more than 702,000 hours of service. They paint homes in the Omaha area for low-income, elderly, or disabled homeowners. An estimated 40,000 gallons of paint and primer have been put on 2,724 homes since the first Brush Up Paint Day. Like the Memphis and Omaha projects, groups of metro area citizens gather together. They spend 1 or 2 days to scrape, prime, and paint their assigned homes. In 91, our third year of operation, we completed 137 homes in 1 day. There's still time for teams of volunteers to sign up this year for the Paint Blitz by contacting Brush Up Nebraska at 402-965-9169. Kelly Suter, Omaha president of Brush Up Nebraska. That's neat.
Yes, I participated in that one.
Did you
year,
really?
yes.
Oh my gosh.
My cousin met her husband there.
Oh, for heaven's sake.
And so, from the living section, we're going to go from the pulpit. This is from Reverend Nick Doherty from the Faithful Shepherd Presbyterian Church. A lot of digital ink has been spilled over what to do about us millennials. Are we the hope of the world or its demise? Are we overly entitled? If so, what societal or cultural shift has caused this condition? Are there real and strong leaders among us? Church publications are spilling ink to and from the mainline Protestant church's perspective. In the end, the question seems to take on this form. How do we get them back? I'll stop right now and thank God that He has placed me as a pastor of a congregation that, for its size, has a very strong and faithful group of millennials and Gen Xers. Unfortunately, as a church leader, I haven't had to ask that question here at our church with a sense of urgency or desperation. But as a fellow millennial and pastor, the question strikes me. Before I would venture to answer the question, I would begin by asking the church its own. Why did we so easily let them go? Of course, no church would forcibly boot a young person out, but I think the church did let them go. We let them go by failing to answer their contemporary and new questions. We let them go by shaming some for asking critical questions of church and God. In other instances, the church meekly backed away as some told the church they could find their spirituality elsewhere. This is all sobering, I know. Fortunately, the answer lies in the heart of the gospel. In Christ, reconciliation is real and is as core as one of the things the church is best at. In Christ, gone is not gone forever, but we, the church, need to search our own collective heart, learn, grow, and then open the doors wide, and they'll be back.
And goal-setting students are honored. It was all about goals. On Wednesday, Mayor Gene Stafford honored the academic achievements of 620 Omaha Public School 5th and 6th graders. There was a ceremony at the Holland Performing Arts Center. The annual event was the grand finale celebration for students who participate in Partnership for Kids. It is a goal-setting program, and students receive a trophy and a goodie bag. All the students at the recognition ceremony met the requirements of the program, achieving goals in math, reading, life skills, and school attendance. Several schools were representative in Omaha. Stafford and OPS Superintendent Mark Evans spoke to the students about the lifelong importance of goal setting. Each of the 11 schools had a student representative address the ceremony attendees. They gave a personal speech reflecting the impact that Partnership for Kids has had in their lives. April Booth, 11, a 6th grader at Fontenelle Elementary, spoke on behalf of her class. She told the room that Partnership for Kids goal buddies help motivate her to look beyond the stars and go for her goals. In the future, I see myself as a doctor helping children with their sicknesses and overall health. In order to get there, I have to little by little achieve my goals along the way. I need to graduate and go to college, then med school. Each level, I need to set goals and focus on them to make it to the next major step. And there were several other children who spoke. And let's see, and there's an education grant. Great Plains Communications presented Wilcox Public Schools with a $2,200 grant in April. The money will be used to buy a software program called Wide World of Words. It is used to improve reading achievement through expansion of vocabulary. This award is part of a program that provides nearly $35,000 annually to schools and students. It is in the form of grants and scholarships. Great Plains Communications is the largest privately owned telecommunicator company in Nebraska.
Oh, and from the pulpit continue, from Reverend Lowell Nelson, from the Emmanuel Lutheran Church in Bellevue. Sparked by the Spirit in last week's Pentecost celebration, we begin our 2016 Pentecost journey, joined by focusing on the Holy Trinity. This is interesting faith work, as the Holy Trinity yields no simple explanation. No matter how many pastors use eggs, apples, triangles, diamonds, or a myriad of other analogies which fall short, by definition, of describing God. It is virtually important to have faithful, articulate members of the church articulate the Holy Trinity, as God is one of three and three. Trinity, as God is one. Luther wrote, "This unity of God exceeds the oneness of any creature and of any mathematical concept, but the oneness at the same time, the threeness of the distinct persons. One God in three persons, Father, Son, and Holy Spirit. Every person is the entire deity, and yet no one person exists as for the deity itself without the other two." Years ago, I had an insight about the structure of the Holy Trinity, in which I shared with my father, a Lutheran pastor. After politely listening to me, he said, after looking at me directly, "Remember, son, if you can explain the Trinity, it's a heresy." While deflated at the time, I fondly recall that story as it guides me back from treating my faith life as a series of remote observations about God to living life with God. A friend created an artful sticker showing the Holy Trinity holding hands and dancing together in mutual love and reciprocity. The early church fathers used the word parachoresis to describe the relationship, and I encourage you to reclaim the utter simplicity and deep intimacy of living with God. I pray each time you proclaim the Apostles' Creed that it's not a remote statement about God, but a song of praise articulating life with our God, the Holy Trinity. And from Reverend James Lindbergh of the Living Grace Lutheran Church, each Sunday morning we make choices. Some people choose to get out of bed late, read the paper, get out for breakfast at their favorite restaurant. They run errands and then enjoy a quiet evening alone or with their family before work on Monday. Other people do these same things, but they also take an hour or two out of their day to go to church and worship service. You may be familiar with what a church service is, but what is worship? Psalm 10:3, 1-2 says, "Let all that I am praise the Lord. With my whole heart I will praise his holy name. May I never forget the good things he does for me." When you go to worship this Sunday, bring all of you to that worship experience. Bring your joys and disappointments, the easy parts of your life and your stresses. Bring your victories and your failings. Why? So you can be reminded once again of the good things God does for you. Woody Allen once said, 80% of success is showing up. Showing up for Sunday worship can be hard to do, especially if you've had a stressful morning, a challenging weekend, or a really difficult week. However, I pray that when you show up, even if your heart is not totally focused, that God will refocus your attention to all the good things God is filling your life with. I also pray that the Holy Spirit can, with the worship service, give you new insights or ways forward in some of those difficult situations that you've been struggling with during the week. And in that worship time, perhaps you can evaluate those things that seem really important to you now in light of eternal perspectives. Showing up for worship with your whole heart is something that you can do this Sunday, and something Christians have been doing for over 2,000 years. I had a friend who said, she quoted this to me, and it really made a lot of sense. I don't know if she originated, but she said, if it's not internal, it's not important.
That's right.
Interesting.
And from Dear Amy, "Dear Amy, my family and I live in a small town in the Midwest. My daughter's friend from high school and college, Laura, is getting married this summer. My daughter is in the wedding party, and Laura has been with her fiance since high school. While I was in Indianapolis on business, I clearly saw Laura walking hand in hand with an unknown man. They had their hands on each other and stopped to kiss along the way. I believe that she's having an affair with this man in a city 100 miles away. Should I tell my daughter or anyone else, or bite my lip and let this wedding go forward? Please don't tell me that I didn't see what I saw, or that I somehow misread what I saw, because there was no mistaking it. Upset. Dear Upset, because this bothers you so much, you could contact Laura directly. Tell her what you saw and share your reaction to what you saw if you must. There is no reason to tell your daughter or anyone else. There are a number of reasons why a bride-to-be might get together with another man before the wedding. This might not be an ongoing affair, but the ending of a relationship. You don't know. If Laura is having an affair and gets married, then she, not you, should feel like a fraud at her wedding. Dear Amy, I'm a high school student who just finished my first phone interview. The scout was one of my dad's patients. I think I did pretty well except for one question. The interview, my dad's patient asked me a very basic math question. I froze, used my calculator, and took way too long to answer the question. I know it seems like not a big deal, but I'm embarrassed. I'm worried she'll think I'm an idiot. This will reflect on my dad. I'm worried I'll be put last on the list for the job. What should I do? I don't have an email. I only have her phone number. Dear Unsure, it is very easy to get an email address. You can look up the person and her company name, call the company's main number, or ask your father to help. You should either email her or write a handwritten note thanking her for the interview. Even if you don't discuss your math question, you must thank her in writing for the interview. Simply say, I'm worried that I blew the math question, but to be honest, I was super nervous. Thank you again for giving me the experience of interviewing. Sorry I was so nervous, it won't happen again. Most people have this experience or one like it. It does not reflect badly on you or your father. If you explain it well, it might even be to your advantage. The woman who interviewed you would think, wow, this student is really honest. It's refreshing to have someone just admit their mistake.
And Meddler is a wonderful look at a mother-daughter relationship. The Meddler with the cast Susan Sarandon, Rose Byrne, J.K. Simmons, Cicely Strong, Jared Carmichael, and Jason Ritter. And it says the perfect Mother's Day movie arrives this weekend, and no, it's not the film with the same name as the holiday, Lorraine Scaffara's The Meddler. Starring Susan Sarandon as the Meddler in question is the kind of deeply felt personal filmmaking that transcends the specific to reveal a universal truth. In this case, a loving, if exasperated, appreciation of the moms of the world. One of the more brilliant touches in Scafaria's script is the voiceover, which is done in rambling voicemail messages that Marnie Sarandon leaves for her daughter, Lori Rose Byrne. Anyone who's received a message like this from her mom will be able to relate as she attempts to squeeze in every thought and bit of news. Lori is a screenwriter, single, and mired in a depressive funk after the breakup with an actor and the death of her father. Marnie is also trying to find her way in the world in the wake of her husband's death, having moved from New Jersey to Los Angeles to be closer to her daughter. So when Lori pushes away from her meddling mom, Marnie finds other people to tend to. She befriends Freddie, Jared Carmichael, a young genius bar employee at the Apple store who helps her with her phone. She drives him to and from night school. She also babysits for Jillian, Cicely Strong, one of Lori's friends, and helps her plan her dream wedding. Marnie happily busies herself with the lives of others and finds some adventures along the way too. She accidentally wanders onto a movie set and becomes an extra for the day. After a mishap with Freddie's brother, she finds herself stoned and meets a friendly former cop, Zipper, J.K. Simmons. But all the meddling becomes a way for her to avoid dealing with her emotional issues, including the devastating loss of her husband. The Meddler is an accurate depiction of the double-sided love, at once irritated and deeply needy, that an adult daughter have for overly can have for an overly involved mother. The nuance portrayed in such a delicate relationship is powered by the funny and sweet performance by Sarandon, who is as good as she's ever been in Marnie. She makes the character lovable and charming, even though at her most intrusive moments. But there's also a bittersweetness, a sadness to her meddling, which she does for lack of anything else to do. Her desire, her need to be loved and needed is as palpable and moving. Rose Byrne is also spot on as the anxious and afraid Lori. The two actresses perfectly capture the sometimes competing desires of mothers who want to see their children happy and daughters who want to be happy for their mothers. It's a complicated emotional register, but the director and the actors got it perfectly right. It sounds like a good movie.
Yeah.
I hadn't heard of it.
And from the chalkboard, Gretna Middle School, 7th grade, high ability learner students recently participated in, quote, cyber surgeons. It is an intense, immersive learning experience that engaged students in a live stimulation to quickly diagnose and treat an array of medical problems. With the help of technology and a video conference connection, students interacted with the chief medical officer at the Challenger Learning Center. Together with their team, students used critical thinking skills and scientific knowledge to solve emergency medical problems. This simulation provides authentic ways for students to apply science knowledge. And Mercy High School freshmen, Ashel Mattock and Mayela Hernandez, have flowers for sale at the school's annual sale. Mercy parents, alumni, and students formed human chains to unload flowers and get them ready for pickup on May 7th. Students sold more than $52,000 in plants and flowers. It will support the negotiated tuition program. Last year, more than $1.6 million in tuition assistance went to 82% of the school's families. And the Dodge Elementary School 5th and 6th grade volleyball teams held a purple out in honor of Crystal Simpson, the school's principal who died unexpectedly in April. Simpson began the intramural sports program at Dodge when she became principal 4 years ago. Purple was her favorite color. Staff and students dressed in purple and decorated the gym with purple ribbons and posters. And a teacher is honored. Lori Brody, a social studies teacher at Johnson Brock Public School, was named 2016 State History Teacher of the Year. It is an award sponsored by the Gilder Lehrman Institute of American History. And 3 Nebraska high schools were recognized last month with the TDS Cup awarded by Teens in the Driver's Seat. It is a driver safety program. Centura High School in Cairo, Nebraska was given first place and $1,000. And this one is a little bit unusual. An egg drop design contest. Macmillan Magnet Center 8th grade students worked in teams to design a container that would prevent a dozen eggs from breaking after being dropped from a 3-story roof.
Interesting.
The students presented their egg drop projects to a panel of professionals. Each team was responsible for creating a budget, a list of materials, and so forth. Students field tested their design during a practice drop and a final drop. The presentations included the group's company name, logo, and slogan. Judges provided feed drop. It didn't say if any of them broke after they were dropped.
I wanted to hear what they found.
I know, I'd like to have seen
I'd
that.
like to take it with me to the grocery store.
That would be hard to do, I think.
Oh, and dear Heloise, I enjoy your column in the Tupelo, Mississippi Daily Journal. When I bake cookies for my great-grandchildren, I chill the dough for a few minutes, then roll the balls into the size of a walnut and place them on a cookie sheet. Then I take a thread spool, medium size with a hole in the middle, and press on the dough. This will make the impression of a flower. I know what she's talking about. From Sarah G. in Blue Springs. Dear Heloise, our house was built in the mid-'70s, and our plumber has cautioned against using commercial drain cleaners. Do you have a drain-friendly suggestion for any of my slow-running bathtub drains? Sure do. Many drain cleaners are loaded with harsh chemicals that can damage plumbing and especially older pipes. Pour a good 1/2 cup to 1 cup baking soda down the drain, followed by 1 to 2 cups of hot vinegar. Let it foam and bubble, then sit 15 to 30 minutes. Follow by running 30 to 60 seconds of cold water to be sure it gets flushed through the system. Two of my favorite items, of course, to always have on hand in the household are vinegar and baking soda.
Yeah.
Cheap, safe, and readily available. And they're always in my pantry. Remember, both baking soda, when used for cleaning, and vinegar will last a long time in the pantry in case you don't get around to using them right away. Stock up and put one in each room of the house. Dear Heloise, to keep my dogs out of the cat's food, I've come up with an ingenious idea. I keep the cat's food and water in my bathtub in the master bath. I'm a shower person, so this works well for me. The dogs aren't able to jump into the tub, but the cats can easily. I wipe the tub out once a week or so to keep it clean. The cats now can eat in peace, and the dogs won't get the cat food, which would make them sick. Win-win. Signed, Judy in San Antonio. And I do have to tell you from the cartoons today that there is, I just have to describe it. It's from the Flying McCoys. There is a long snake with his mouth open. And there's a big lump down his throat, and out of his mouth is a selfie stick with with an iPod, and you see click. So someone's making a movie of themselves inside the snake's stomach.
Okay, and a strong heritage is worth saluting. The wood-planked one-room schoolhouse is an icon of prairie education. It evokes images of the do-it-all teacher shoveling the walk, chopping wood for the stove, and teaching spelling, of teenagers learning history while a 6-year-old learns the alphabet. In 1913, half of American school children attended one of 212,000 single-teacher schools. This is from Jonathan Zimmerman's Small Wonder, The Little Red Schoolhouse. Nostalgia for these country schools lingers long after most have closed. 33 such schools still operate in Nebraska and 60 in Iowa, but they're dwindling. Their rich history will be celebrated July 8th and 9th at Peru State College. Great teachers from one-room schools will be honored during the first Nebraska Country School Conference. Iowa has held annual country school conferences since 2000. The Country School Association of America plans a national conference in 2018 at Homestead National Monument in Beatrice. Generations of Nebraska kids learn about such schools during field trips to the Heritage School at the former state grounds in Lincoln. It has been moved to Lincoln's Pioneer Park and still teaching children about schools long before the era of smartphones and social media. Preserving the history of country schools is my passion, said Betty Stutenholtz of Nebraska City. She is a state conference organizer who is writing a book about 109 former one-room schools in Otto County. After I'm gone, there aren't going to be many people who know what a country school was.
And from history, the quote today is from Irving Kristol, an American writer who lived from 1920 to 2009. Being frustrated is disagreeable, but the real disasters of life begin when you get what you want. Maybe so. And today in history, on May 21st, 1932, Amelia Earhart became the first woman to fly solo across the Atlantic Ocean. She landed in Northern Ireland about 15 hours after leaving Newfoundland. On May 21st, 1927, Charles A. Lindbergh, landing his Spirit of St. Louis monoplane near Paris, completing the first solo airplane flight across the Atlantic Ocean in 33 and a half hours. Wow. And May 21st of 1471, King Henry VII of England died in the Tower of London at age 49. In 1542, Spanish explorer Hernando de Soto died while searching for gold along the Mississippi River. In 1881, Clara Barton founded the American Red Cross on this day. In 1941, a German U-boat sank the American merchant steamship SS Robin Moore in the South Atlantic after the ship's passengers and crews were allowed to board lifeboats. In 1945, actress Humphrey Bogart and Lauren Bacall, now Humphrey Bogart was 45, Lauren Bacall was 20, were married at the Malabar Farm in Lucas, Ohio. And in 1972, Michelangelo's Pietà, on display at the Vatican, was damaged by a hammer-wielding man who shouted he was Jesus Christ. It's one of my favorite statues. In 1991, former Indian Prime Minister Rajiv Gandhi was assassinated during national elections by a suicide bomber. And today's birthdays, rhythm and blues singer Ron Isley for the Isley Brothers is 75. Actor Richard Hatch is 71. Actor Mr. T is 64. And actor Judge Reinhold is 59.
And how we met. A perfect mix thanks to their bartender friend. Kelly Fahey was tired. It was getting late on that August night in 1990. She had worked all day as a nurse, then at a second job at a woman's spa. She was planning to eat some popcorn and read the newspaper, but got a call from a girlfriend who tended bar at a pub in West Omaha. Friend offered to buy Kelly a drink if she'd come down to the bar. Kelly was hesitant, but said yes. When she arrived, the friend said there was a guy she ought to meet. Kelly had been through a recent divorce and told her friend she was not interested in meeting anyone. But her friend persisted, so Kelly said okay. The guy's name was J.J. Tuller. He, too, was a friend of the bartenders, and like Kelly, he was divorced after 10 years of marriage and wasn't trying to meet anyone. But the bartender persuaded him to introduce himself. J.J. asked Kelly whether she liked to play darts. He was in a darts league and she had never played, but she beat him anyway. They chatted as they played and hit it off. He invited her to dinner the next night. They had a long talk about their former marriages and where they grew up. Kelly was a South Omaha girl, graduate of South High. J.J. grew up near Neely, Nebraska. Kelly was 33, J.J. was 28. Neither had children, but both hoped to start a family. They began dating, and they knew it would be something permanent. They got engaged a few months later and married in March of 91 at Lake Tahoe Resort on the California-Nebraska border. 11 months later, son Jake was born. They celebrated their 25th wedding anniversary this spring, grateful to that persistent bartender who introduced them. Kelly is manager at a medical clinic and JJ is a carpenter. She works with young women who share their boyfriend problems and other romantic troubles. She thinks back and offers some simple advice. When you least expect it, good things can happen.
Interesting. And from the money section, applicant experiment. Your current job might turn off potential employers. From Pittsburgh, ever wonder how much taking a job below your skill level could affect your prospects for future employment? The University of Texas sociologist has an answer for you. A lot. A history of skills underutilization is scarring for workers as a year of unemployment, said David Petula, whose report on the topic appeared in April's issue of American Sociological Review. Petula explored his interest in what he calls labor market inequity by developing resumes for imaginary job applicants. The job seekers he created had a few things in common. They had a college degree, worked nearly 2 years at their first job, worked about 4.5 years at their second job. What differed among them was their third job, one that Padula created for the most recent year. His imaginary workers either had a full-time job that matched their skills, a part-time job, a job through a temporary help agency, and a job below their skill level or were unemployed. Then Padula submitted 2,420 resumes based on his imaginary job seekers, along with cover letters, to online ads for 1,210 real jobs. Each of the applicants had an email address and a real phone number, with a voicemail account that employers could contact if they were interested in talking with the applicant. These callback rates varied widely based on how the imaginary job seeker had spent the last year. Padula said employers interested reflected that they read into the applicant's most recent job history, such as how competent they were and how committed they are to their careers. Applicants, male and female, who had full-time jobs in the past year were called back 10.4% of the time. Those whose most recent year was a job below their skill level were called back only 5% of the time. Male applicants unemployed for a year were called back 4.2% of the time. Female applicants unemployed for a year were called back 7.5% of the time. The study also suggested that holding a part-time job for the previous year hurt men much more than it did women. Male applicants with that history received employment callbacks only 4.8% of the time. Women with part-time jobs were called back 10.9% of the time. Men face severe penalties for part-time work histories, but women experience no penalties, Padula wrote. However, Padula cautioned there are some limits to what lessons can be taken from the experiment. It measured only the initial interest of employers in the fictional job candidates, not whether the employer would in fact hire them or what applicants would be paid based on their recent job experiences. But it's interesting.
Yeah. A store closing. The end of the line for Hy-Vee at 35th and L.
Really?
This store is known for its supply of items popular with Hispanic customers. It will close at the end of next month. It is the first time that the Des Moines-based company has closed a store in Omaha without plans to relocate it. The store will shut its doors for the final time at 6 p.m. on June 26. Employees will be offered positions at other Omaha Hy-Vees. Hy-Vee said it's closing because it has not met sales expectations for more than a decade. The aging building no longer reflects the current brand standard for Hy-Vee. We understand this store has served as an important neighborhood store for many years and for residents nearby. Unfortunately, resident support and our employees' hard work have not equated to successful sales. The Stockyards Hy-Vee was known for carrying items popular with Hispanic customers, including specialty produce, meats, and spices. Many of the employees also spoke Spanish. Our store directors worked hard to offer the products that reflect the community. The store has faced stiffer competition in recent years. A Walmart neighborhood market that caters to Hispanic customers recently opened. Let's see here, where we go. Okay, here we are. Also, the Walmart opened in 2013 at 50th and L Street.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Spartan Nash also converted a former No Frills at 3508 Q Street and a former Avanza store at 2900 Leavenworth to Supermercado stores. Other competition in the area is Aldi's at L Street and No Frills at 24th and Vinton. Wow, there's a lot of them. Hy-Vee customers will be notified of the closing by employees and by signs posted throughout the store. Customers will receive letters informing them that their prescriptions will be transferred to the 51st and Center Street.
And from Washington, nutrition labels on food packages are getting a long-awaited makeover, with calories listed in bigger, bolder type and a new line for added sugars. Serving sizes, too, will be updated to make them more realistic, so that small bag of chips won't count as 2 or 3 servings, for example. You'll no longer need a microscope to figure out whether the food is actually good for your kids, First Lady Michelle Obama said Friday. She announced final rules for the new labels in a speech at an annual health summit as part of the Let's Move campaign against childhood obesity. The calorie count is in bigger font, so you can actually see it, she said. This label will tell you how much of the sugar in your snack was added after processing. 2 years ago, the Food and Drug Administration proposed the changes, the first major update to the nutrition label since their creation, and I didn't realize they're so new, 1994. Now they're found on more than 800,000 foods. In recent decades, food science has changed. The label overhaul reflects it. In the 90s, for example, fat was the focus. Nowadays, there is more concern about how many calories people eat. Hence, the calorie listing now will be larger than the rest of the type on the label, making it hard to overlook. Serving sizes will also be easier to see, listed at the top of the label, and the revised serving sizes are intended to make it easier to discern how many servings really are in the container. Calculations for serving this size will also be revised. The idea behind listing a whole package of food or a whole drink as one serving isn't to encourage people to eat more. The idea is how they should understand how many calories they are in fact eating. By law, FDA says serving sizes must be based on actual consumption, not ideal consumption. Nutrition advocates have long asked for the added sugars line because it's otherwise impossible for consumers to know how much sugar in an item is naturally occurring, such as in fruit or dairy products, and how much has been added by the manufacturer. Think of an apple versus applesauce, which comes up sweetened and unsweetened versions. The labels will also include a new percent daily value for sugars, meaning the percentage of a person's recommended daily intake of added sugars the particular food contains. Dietary guidelines announced this year recommend that people get no more than 10% of calories from added sugars. Calculations are based on an average of 2,000 calories a day, so people should not get more than 200 calories from added sugars per day. Michael Jacobson, president of the advocacy group Center for Science in Public Interest, said it's now impossible for label reading consumers to know how much of the sugar in the foods is added and how much it fits into the reasonable diet. Besides helping consumers make more informed choices, he said, the new labels should also spur food manufacturers to add less sugar to their products. Other label changes: they must now list the levels of potassium and vitamin D, two nutrients of which Americans generally don't get enough. Vitamin C and A listings are no longer required but can be included. Iron and calcium will stay. The food industry has 2 years to comply with this. Since the changes were first proposed, reaction from food companies has been mixed. Some have fought the new line for added sugar, others have supported it. The Grocery Manufacturers Association, which represents the food industry's largest companies, has supported the larger print for calories. This update is timely, said the association's Leo Bruner, as diets, eating patterns, and consumer preferences have changed dramatically since the Nutrition Facts Panel was first introduced. I did not know that was 94.
And frozen food recall covers a lot. Over 400 products from a plant in Washington state could be tainted with listeria. In Des Moines, amid a massive frozen food recall involving millions of packages of fruits and vegetables that were shipped all over the U.S., authorities who want to stem the listeria-linked illness and deaths worry that it will be difficult to get consumers to dig through their freezers and check for products as far back as 2014. It is one of the largest food recalls in recent memory, with well over 400 products from CRF Frozen Foods in Pasco, Washington. It is sold under 40 different brand names at major retailers. So far, 8 people have been sickened by listeria that's genetically similar to that found in vegetables. 2 people have died. Unquestionably, it reflects the severity of listeria as an illness, the long duration of illness and the outbreak, and the long shelf life of the products. The initial recall started April 22nd, covering 11 frozen vegetable products. May 2nd, CRF expanded the recall to include all of its frozen, organic, and traditional fruit and vegetable products manufacturing in the Washington plant since May of 14. Thanks to recently developed whole genome sequencing, the Food and Drug Administration found that the listeria bacteria found in the blood of a person in 2013 is genetically similar to the one in the recall. The CRF plant closed 2 weeks ago. They're trying to pinpoint the source of the contamination. Consumers should check the online recall list and discard products from their freezers. Listeriosis always makes us worry because it is such a serious illness. The CDC says listeria is most harmful to adults over 65 with weakened immune systems and pregnant women. Products were both packaged for sale as individual products and repackaged by ConAgra Foods, Piggly Wiggly, and Kroger, and as ingredients in a host of other store brand and private label products such as Trader Joe's
Oh,
and Costco. Also, retailers include Target and distributors such as Hy-Vee. They have recently recalled products made by Tokyo-based Windsor due to the company recalling 70 of its Asian products, about 47 million pounds worth. The FDA and CDC have developed a system to track the genetic makeup of Salmonella, Listeria, and E. coli. They can match the DNA from contaminated foods with the bacteria making people sick. In this outbreak, of those 8 who were sick, 6 were in California. The 2 people who died were from Maryland and Washington. Authorities say it's unclear why there are not more illnesses. Wise said the levels of Listeria contaminations might not be as high in the packaged vegetables. Also, the vegetables in the recall are typically cooked before they're eaten, which could have killed the bacteria.
oh, that's a pretty serious thing.
Yeah.
Thank you. And I am going to read one more article from the business section because I think it's important for people this summer. The head of the Transportation Security Administration warned travelers Friday to expect long airport security lines to continue during the peak summer travel season, even though Congress has shifted $34 million to the agency. Peter Neffinger briefed officials in Chicago about efforts to address crushing delays in getting passengers through security checkpoints at major airports. Congress agreed to move forward $34 million to TSA funding to let the agency pay overtime to existing staff and hire 768 more screeners by June 15th. The agency is funneling many of these resources to major hub airports like Chicago's O'Hare. Neffinger called the money a good down payment, but said more was needed to address the shortage of screeners. I think this summer is going to continue to be a challenge, he told a press conference. I think we're going to do everything we can to mitigate that from the larger standpoints, and I think you'll still see crowds at airports. My goal is to keep you moving. Despite Neffinger's call for more resources, there is no grand plan to return staffing to former levels as high as 28% among its part-time work. To staffing its former levels, and the agency is suffering from attrition as high as 28%, among its part-time workers. U.S. Senator Dick Durbin acknowledged that some of the things Congress has done to cap the number of screeners and limit resources were unfair. But he said that TSA has the responsibility to manage its limited resources effectively. Emanuel told reporters there are delays that were unacceptable and especially aggravating because the signs of security meltdown appeared weeks ago. He said Chicago would monitor the TSA's progress with accountability scorecards. More people are flying thanks to the strengthening economy, more flights and lower fares. At the same time, TSA and Congress cut the number of screeners by 10%, expecting that an expedited screening program called PreCheck would speed up the lines. However, not enough people enrolled. To reduce lines, the TSA also had been randomly placing passengers from regular screening lines into the faster PreCheck lines and lanes, a program called Manage Inclusion, but stopped in the fall after government auditors found lapses in security. Neffinger ruled out any return to managed inclusion, but he said there's been a tremendous increase in the number of PreCheck enrollments in recent weeks. Meanwhile, Chicago's 2 airports are getting more bomb-sniffing dogs and an extra 58 screeners immediately. Nearly 250 more are due by mid-August. 100 other staffers will shift from part-time to full-time employment. So it looks like they're trying.
Yeah. And the U.S. team moves its camp because of Zika concerns. In Atlanta, the U.S. swimming has moved a pre-Olympic training camp out of Puerto Rico because of the Zika virus. There are no plans to bail on the Summer Games in Brazil, even though that country is the center of the outbreak. Frank Bush, the U.S. national team director, sent a letter Thursday to all team coaches telling them of the change. The camp will now be held in Atlanta instead of Puerto Rico. As part of our preparations for the Olympic Games this summer, we have been closely monitoring the Zika virus. According to the Center for Disease Control and other health experts in the field, our athletes would be highly exposed to the Zika virus in Puerto Rico. The U.S. team is still scheduled to hold a training camp in San Antonio. After that, the team has been planning to make a stop in Puerto Rico for several more days. Now that camp will be held at the Georgia Tech Aquatic Center, site of the '96 Olympics. When asked about the seeming contradiction of canceling a camp in Puerto Rico because of Zika, but going on to compete in the countries hardest hit by the virus, Bowman said he believes the risk will actually be much lower at the Olympics. Honestly, we can control it better in Rio. They're taking every precaution they can. We're talking about swimming in an indoor venue in the wintertime. Plus, we have other measures. U.S. swimming decisions follows a move by Major League Baseball to shift 2 regular season games from San Juan because of the virus. The May 30 and 31st series between the Marlins and the Pittsburgh Pirates will now be held in Miami. The Zika virus is carried by mosquitoes and has been linked to microcephaly, a condition in which babies are born with smaller brains. It also may contribute to the Guillain-Barré syndrome in adults, a condition that leads to rapid muscle weakness caused by immune system damage. The health and safety of our athletes in U.S. swimming is a primary concern. The Zika outbreak has been one of the major headaches facing Olympic organizers as they prepare for South America's first Olympics. Brazil officials insist that they will keep the athletes safe. Brazil is by far the country most affected by the Zika virus.
And rain, little concern for the Nyquist camp. From Baltimore, let it rain again on the Preakness. Team Nyquist doesn't seem concerned. A driving rainstorm didn't faze American Pharoah as he splashed his way to victory in the second leg of the Triple Crown last year, and it sure appears that Kentucky Derby winner Nyquist will have to do the same to set up another triple try in the Belmont Stakes. The National Weather Service on Friday gave a forecast calling for nearly 100% chance of rain beginning early Saturday and continuing throughout the day, with as much as 3/4 of an inch expected. Temperatures will be in the mid-50s with wind gusts up to 20 miles per hour. Post time for the Preakness is 5:18 p.m. With a horse like Nyquist, I'm not overly concerned about the weather, said trainer Doug O'Neill on a bright, sunny Friday morning. As far as rain or shine, we're not going to change anything shoeing-wise. He's going to wear the same shoes he's got on, and he'll just love to have the beautiful day. Rain could be a good thing for several of his top rivals, though, especially Derby runner-up Exaggerator or longshot Cherry Wine. Both have run well in the mud, with Exaggerator taking the Santa Ana Derby on a sloppy track and Cherry Wine breaking his maiden by 9.5 lengths under similar conditions. I'll be one of the few people doing a rain dance, Cherry Wine's trainer Dale Roman said. Nyquist, with an 8-0 record, won the Florida Derby over a surface listed as good, even though the track had been drenched by a rainstorm before the race. The fleet son of Uncle Mo is a win away from the shot at the Triple Crown, which would give racing back-to-back triples for the second time. American Pharoah, of course, became the first to sweep the Derby, Preakness, and Belmont, since affirmed in 1978, a year after Seattle Slew won it. But first, Nyquist has to defeat over 10 rivals at 1 3/16 miles over Pimlico Racecourse, a track he's become familiar with over the last 2 weeks. The 3-5 favorite leaves from the number 3 post with Mario Gutierrez aboard. O'Neill has been through this before, along with owner J. Paul Redden and Gutierrez in 2012. They won the Derby and the Preakness with I'll Have Another, who was retired the day before the Belmont because of an injury.
Yeah.
Asked what would be an ideal
that.
trip for Nyquist, O'Neill didn't hesitate. We break great, we have the lead, and we go really easy around there. Mario knows Nyquist so well. He has so much speed away from the gate. Ideally, he gets a good position wherever that is, and he runs a big race. And really, everyone, that takes
Such
us
a
up.
time. Yes, it does.
Thank you, Gina. We hope everyone has a lovely weekend.
All right.
So what are you going to do for the rest
I'm
of the
gonna
week?
see how she's doing.
Your friend? You're gonna
No,
go
my
see-
daughter.
Oh, yes. So does she have any medicine at home or any like humidifiers or anything that'll help her? Well, she probably doesn't need a humidifier.
Kind of sad.
How long has she been sick, Jean?
About 3 days.
Oh, honey, that's
We
your
used to take.
lungs.
We used to take her every year for bronchitis to the emergency room.
Oh,
She
honey,
hasn't had a lot of it, but
you're such a
She
good
sounds
mother,
terrible.
Jean. I'll take care of it for you.
I'm gonna call the library and see if there's any kind of help for all these people that have been switched to private insurance
Well,
from
they've
the
been
med.
switched, but is it
There's
paid?
500,000 of them in Iowa
Are
that are on this low income
But
insurance.
they get it.
They get it, and
See,
she
Nebraskans
should.
don't, thanks to Rick.
Yeah, I know it. I think she didn't know how to do the paperwork and stuff. It's complicated
It
for her.
is. It's a lot.
And she doesn't do computers,
It's
so.
like me with taxes. I hate taxes.
Yeah.
You're
It's been
so
a big
cute
thing. It's
today.
just been a big
Have you
mess
been
in Iowa.
eating
Oh, yeah,
yourself?
I eat fine, yeah.
Hi, baby boy. You know you can come up to my house. Look at the
Isn't he
soft
good?
toes.
So good.
Oh, you hold my hands.
Aw.
Hi, baby boy. Oh, you can come anytime. I come home and the dogs smell me up and down after I've seen them. Hi, I'm gonna take my paper.
Sorry.
Okay. So are you going right over there? Or are you gonna call?